While I do think there is a time and a place for simple evil villains, most campaigns will be vastly improved by having multi-dimensional, complex big bads. So let's jump into 8 ways to create compelling villains for your tabletop campaign. First up, when creating your villain, consider utilizing archetypes or build off of an idea. Maybe they're a fallen hero, a vengeful mage, or a manipulative noble. Starting with a solid concept can really set the tone for the villain's journey. I also will kind of consider villains from stories I really enjoy. This can give me a good starting point, and then I can build, change, and expand to make my own unique antagonist. I've also been in a game where the GM asked all of the players for our favorite villains from TV, literature, video games, etc. And then he used our answers to help shape the bad guys in that campaign. That was a really cool approach and something that I'm probably going to use in my future campaigns. Next up, consider their motive and goal. Every great villain needs a reason for their actions. Maybe they're seeking power, redemption, or revenge. Whatever it is, make sure it's compelling and drives the story forward. This will help inform the character's choices and how you play them. If you have an ultimate goal figured out, you can adjust their strategy or methods based on where the players take the story. You can use their goal as kind of a guidepost for figuring out what their plans and reactions are going to be. Next, you should consider growth. Your villains shouldn't remain stagnant throughout the campaign. Allow them to evolve and adapt based on the player's actions, especially if they meet multiple times. This keeps things interesting and adds depth to the character. Also, as the characters level up over the course of a campaign, the NPCs can also be gaining knowledge and essentially leveling up, or literally leveling up. This will allow for new abilities the PCs may not be expecting, and especially if the villain ends up multi-classing or they have a significant transformation at some point, like a lich or a vampire, or they gain an ally, that will add a new element that maybe the players might not necessarily be expecting, but will make sense in the larger story. Today's video is brought to you by The Wandering Tavern. Have you ever wanted to explore a floating Studio Ghibli-esque location? Well, you can in The Wandering Tavern, now on Kickstarter. The Wandering Tavern is a system-agnostic floating tabletop RPG setting with optional D&D 5e stats included. It's packed full of plot hooks, mysteries, threats, and everything you need for a campaign. However, if you already have an established world and setting, The Wandering Tavern is the perfect, unique pit stop for your players to visit, take a load off, and delve into a whole new sort of adventure. This 150-page traveler's guide will include battle maps, unique NPC patrons and staff, remarkable magical items, twisted spirits, and never-before-seen zephyrs to glide through uncharted skies. All of this is brought to you by the Homie and the Dude, the father-son-led team that created Sky Zephyrs. Make sure you use the link in our description to head on over to their Kickstarter, live now through May 9th. For me, some of my favorite villains are those that in some way I have an emotional investment. Now, there are a lot of different ways to make your players feel conflicted about their opposition. So let's get into a few ways to create villains your players will love to hate. Kind of all the rest of these fall under that category. Villain is a hero with an unredeemable flaw. Now, whether you take the hero part literally and have them be an adventurer who had a downfall and turned to evil paths, or use it as a guidepost, create your villain as a hero. In fact, they probably see themselves as the hero of their story, but give them an unredeemable flaw. Perhaps they were a noble knight, but they had discovered they had an insatiable thirst for bloodshed and became ruthless and used extreme violence to achieve their goals. Maybe they're a skilled mage with an obsession for ultimate power at any cost. Or they're a charismatic leader, but they have a manipulative nature. They all have the potential to be great, but their flaw is what it kind of turns them into a villain. And you can also utilize this flaw as perhaps what could lead toward their ultimate downfall. Next up, personal stakes. I like to find a way to tie the villain's actions to the player's characters' direct lives. Um, this is a great opportunity to use those character backstories. Perhaps the villain threatens a beloved NPC or a family member of one of the characters. That emotional connection to something personal is really going to help motivate the players to take action and care about what the villain does. Next, sympathetic traits. Consider giving your villain relatable qualities that will humanize them. A tragic past or a misguided sense of justice can really hit home with some players. Maybe they even share a connection through that past event or through a similar viewpoint to one of the player characters. I think this aspect can also provide more interesting player choices, as they may not approach the villain in a complete, we must stop them, but perhaps can try and negotiate or attempt to get the villain to see reason. It also can provide moments, especially if they have a very similar past or something like that, where a player character could see kind of an alternate reality of, oh, I could have become this person. And that can play out to have some really interesting story moments and interactions. I want to take a moment to thank all of our patrons, especially Sean. If you want to directly support our channel, Patreon is the best way to do so. So head on over to patreon.com/rollforinitiative and check out the perks of being a patron. Present villains with complex morals. Their actions aren't necessarily black and white, but fall into kind of a morally gray area. This may make your player characters question their own choices and wonder if the villain is truly evil or just misunderstood. Or perhaps the players agree with the villain's motivation or purpose, but don't agree with the methods. This can build conflict, as they may even agree with the villain's goal and want the same thing, but oppose the course the villain plans to take to get there. And finally, face-to-face time. Design encounters and opportunities for your players to come face-to-face with the villain. While I think minions are great to add variety and keep the villain a bit of a mystery, being able to put a face to the big bad and speak with them is going to humanize the conflict and add depth to the story. It can allow for moments of emotional investment, all of those things I just was talking about. And these face-to-face moments can be outside of combat encounters. Perhaps they meet someplace where it would be uncouth to start a fight, like at a royal party or a holy location where weapons aren't allowed and violence is looked down on. Or maybe they meet the villain without knowing it at the time, and then after the fact learn their true identity. That adds a fun twist and allows the characters to get to know the villain so they aren't kind of perceived as one-dimensional. It adds that depth. So there you have it, folks. Those are 8 techniques to craft more dynamic villains that will keep your players on their toes and add an extra layer of depth to your campaigns. So how about you? How do you like to craft your villains and antagonists? Do you have any particular techniques or themes you find yourself gravitating towards? Let's chat more in the comments below. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time on Roll for Initiative. Bye!